Here's Golf to Go with Frank LaRosa.
Steve Young is playing in this week's AT&T National Pro-Am at Pebble Beach. He's a three-time Super Bowl champion, a two-time NFL Most Valuable Player, a highly successful businessman, and one of today's most popular sports television commentators. It's a pleasure to have him on People Who Play the Game. Welcome, Steve.
Frank, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's a wonderful week.
Oh boy, it's got to be really exciting what you've got ahead of you.
Best one of the year. You know, there's a group of guys, even Harris Barton, my old teammate, is now famous down on the Monterey Peninsula. And there's a whole group of guys that just, this is Christmas week. This is the number one week of the year. And it means a lot to a lot of people in many different ways. But for those of us that have been around the Monterey Peninsula growing, I'm every Tuesday, day off, not every Tuesday, but every once in a while, John Staples, who had just joined Cyprus, a friend of Mike Kofer's, our kicker, would have us down and play in the fog on a Tuesday in late November. And I can't tell you how cathartic and wonderful and memorable those moments were in trying to get through a tough NFL season. So there's a lot of them, historical emotion around being down on the peninsula.
Yeah, it's the notion of walking a golf course and walking in the steps of of the Hogans and Palmers and Nicklases. It's pretty exciting.
Well, what's amazing about golf too, is that like people love football. They love watching football, but so few play it, and then play it for very long, maybe high school. So there's a connection to the game that is unique and different, but golf is completely different. You can go play, and you can play the courses that the pros play, and you can get a sense of what that expertise is. You can live it. And I think that's what makes golf so amazing and alluring, is that you're constantly chasing what you don't have to wonder about. You can walk where the pros walk. And that's what's so fun about this week as well.
Obviously, we're here to talk about the AT&T National Pro-Am, and that's what we're going to do. But I'd be remiss if I don't ask you for a little perspective on last week's 49ers-Rams game and maybe some thoughts on the 49ers season.
Well, first of all, the 49ers season is remarkable in that it was almost halfway through and they had not found their footing. They were floundering and trying to figure out who they were. And that's a tough spot in the NFL, because every year, especially today, every year a team gets put together in August and then they just attack the mountain, and they're like, who are we? And so it's not unusual to have some challenges in kind of self-defining. But what they did is they saw themselves kind of a middling, where they're supposed to be a Super Bowl kind of roster, where we're expected to be. And I always think that it's about the personalities in the locker room and the grit and the galvanizing of the sense of oneness that they can. And it's hard to describe. People say, what is that, Steve? What does it look like? What does it feel like? When you're in the locker room, you can sense it. And I feel like after I've watched it so many years that I can as well from outside. I saw the 49ers start to build that grit, and it just exploded, which is unusual, Frank. Usually football teams can't grow that organically fast enough to actually make a difference in the season. And they grew it faster than normal and exponentially, like it just mushroomed. And who they became and the threat that they were when they took the field towards the end of December. I remember a lot of commentary I heard about after they beat the Rams at the final game of the year. A lot of people lamenting, geez, we had the 49ers out of this thing so close. Now we got to put up with them. A lot of playoff teams were like, geez, can we get rid of these guys? And so I think that is a testimony to the 49er, John Lynch, to the roster, to Kyle Shanahan coaching that. That's not easy to do. And those core fundamental leaders in that group that became that team, and what a run in the playoffs. So I got to tell you, from a 49er perspective, it's the grit and that oneness in the locker room that what made us famous in the 80s and 90s, and having it back and around a lot and be able to be drawn on is something really cool to me. I don't want to belabor it, but super fun to think about. But the game itself, obviously, Sunday night was the Rams are a great team, and they got better over the last 3 weeks since we beat them. And they showed that. They showed that they had gotten better. And in the end, that was the difference.
Well, your description certainly described your teams and the way you played as well. So I can imagine there's a bit of a thrill. You have any Super Bowl prediction?
I mean, obviously the Cincinnati Bengals, you could see them coming somewhat in some similar fashion about the middle of the season. All of a sudden, I guess when they played the Ravens and Jamar Chase, and they just exploded. And you saw these young players coming together, like they're going to get good. And it's just about how fast. And I think Joe Burrow is the kind of player that's allowed that to be faster than you thought. And so it's going to be hard to predict the Super Bowl. Are you really that good? I mean, that's the question, right? Oh, I know you're going to be good or even great, and you'll probably be around for a long time, but are you that good that fast? Now, the Rams have gotten this way from a lot of veterans and a lot of people you can count on, and you've seen that in the playoffs. They are going to be tough to beat. Yeah. So it really becomes your bet is, are the Bengals really, these young kids, are they really that good that fast? I suspect probably, my intuition is like, that's hard to do. So the odds are against them to be able to be that good that fast. And so I'm going to pick the Rams, but with the Bengals, I mean, they've already proved me wrong 3 or 4 times in the last month. Pretty
exciting as well. One more football question. Give me your lasting thought about John Madden.
Oh, I think that his impact is greater than people realize, because his vulnerability and honesty and his fame never cost. Usually there's a cost to people's fame, and they're not as vulnerable and they're not as authentic, and they lose their people. The people, he was a man of the people more than anybody. On that bus, traveling around the country, meeting people, it was always authentic. It was real. And that's what I always felt like. Every time I met him, I laughed. I mean, we traded barbs. We were like old friends. Like, you'd see him 4 or 5 times a year before a big game. Well, a lot of pressure on the guy. You know, when I'm going in the day before to meet with him and Pat Summerall, that's a pretty pressure situation. We're playing the Packers, or playing the Cowboys or somebody like that. And immediately we're laughing about something that happened on the tour. I mean, his hair, my hairdo, like we just make fun of each other. And so that's this, I've said this many times. The first time I met him my whole life was on the Madden Cruiser, going in for this pregame conversation that happened the day before usually. And before I even said hello, you know, because I was going to say, Mr. Madden, coach, very nice to meet you. I couldn't even get anything out. And he goes, what do you comb your hair with a pork chop? That was his first words out of his mouth to me throughout my life. And so that became the nature of our relationship. And so despite the enormity of what was going on around us, like these big games, these national kind of storylines, underneath it was this vulnerable, authentic friendship that he had with me and millions of other people. And that's why his life is an abundant life, because of what he left kind of paying it forward. And so there's a spirit to John Madden. I will add one last thing, Frank. In many ways, women who didn't have a chance to play as much football, there's women that are playing more and more football. I get that, and that's great. But there's a whole generation of women that are very attracted to football that I think John welcomed them in. I think he did a wonderful thing for people who had not played the game necessarily, but had a tremendous interest in it, that made it safe in some ways. And I think that it really made a difference. And I think it exploded the popularity of the NFL because of John Madden.
Remarkable. Thank you. The AT&T National Pro-Am, it is a special kind of tournament because it brings together celebrities and captains of industry and, you know, the best tour players in the world, all on the, well, you know, is there a more beautiful location than the Monterey Peninsula?
No, there's not.
What is it to you personally that's so special about this tournament?
There's multiple things. First of all, there's a love of the Monterey Peninsula. There's a love of when you drive in, and for us, it's local. It just smells, it's unique, and it looks unique, and it feels unique. And every time I've ever been down there, and so there's that part of it. There's also the history of the AT&T and the clam bake and the spirit of, we're bringing the pros together with some people who golf lovers, and there's a camaraderie around that. And I can feel that from even when I play in the AT&T, no matter who I get paired with, somebody has that sense of history. And so there's a spirit to our now partnership over the next 3 or 4 days. And that's different than anywhere else that I'd ever done that. I've played in pro-ams and been with pros before, and there's a natural affinity to athletes getting together. But on the Monterey Peninsula, you have an AT&T, it has this clam-bake history. And I think that's still there, the spirit of what was going on with being in the guys and what Clint Eastwood for many years, and there's everybody, Arnold Palmer, and just people that, so there's that part of it. And then there's just the tournament itself. There's the Peninsula Foundation, Steve John. You don't realize how much work that gets done for good out of the Monterey Peninsula Foundation. And that it's a big fundraiser, and it's real. And I've supported them for a long time. I think that there's that piece to it as well. And then over all of it is the tournament and the actual going out, and you get to play Pebble, you used to walk it with pros and see shots hit. Like I can go play Pebble and scrape it around and, have play, hit number 7 and, want, hope and dream, but to watch the pros play Pebble Beach is something kind of super special, because the shots that are hit, Pebble's special. And when you're playing great golf, I played with Phil Mickelson when he almost won. He finished second a couple of years ago. I saw things from a golfer, shots that are hit that I'm like, what? Like over and over and over again. And because I love athleticism and love the challenge of, games could be different. Football and golf, they're different, but there's similarities to kind of that excellence, and I'm watching Phil do this, but I'm watching it at Pebble. Like there's something about the excellence matching with this iconic space. And I remember I finished the round and I was like, that was one of the most memorable sporting events of my life.
Mm.
You think about it, I played 18 seasons in the NFL and USFL and everywhere else in college. And one of my favorite memories is going to be playing that round with Phil Mickelson, watching him, being a kind of an integral kind of part of watching it unfold at Pebble. So I think that's a big answer to, I think, a big question, to be honest with you, Frank. It's not a small question.
Well, it means a lot, obviously. I love the answer. Speaking of the Monterey Peninsula Foundation, I saw a piece this morning, the first to reach a charitable giving milestone among PGA tournaments, surpassing 200 million charity dollars in total dollars. That is a remarkable number. And obviously that went to a lot of local education and children's charities and healthcare. What they do, as you say, they're
very quiet about it. They're that's that, and that's what I love about it too. There's a selflessness to the spirit of what's happening down there. Look, we're not looking for credit. We're just looking to do great things, and that's why I love supporting the foundation. And that's part of this week, a big part of this week, to be honest with you, for a lot of people, is to see that quiet, excellent work that they do. And it's the power of golf and the power of golf on the peninsula. So let's be honest about it.
Who are you paired with this week?
I don't know. Find out tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, find out
Very
tomorrow.
Good.
I tell you, a couple of years ago with Phil Mickelson, it was the Workday group with Snedeker and Phil and myself and Anil Booster, who runs Workday. And Anil says, well, I'm going to play with Phil and you got Brent. And I said, oh, that's great. That's great. Because, playing with Phil's, that's no, you don't want to, like, and I remember getting the first tee at Spyglass, and suddenly they say, and now introducing Steve Young, who will play with Phil Mickelson. And I looked at Anil and I'm like, wait, I thought, and he's like, I panicked. So we had our foursome, Sneds and Phil and myself and Anil. That was, you talk about, that will be, I think, the iconic time for me in my life on the Monterey Peninsula. I don't know how anything can beat that. Those 4 days with those 4 people that I really appreciate and love.
It's got to be remarkable that they are able to, play such incredible golf and still have the wherewithal to be able to, talk, enjoy, have fun, rib each other and pretty much be like a Saturday foursome in many ways.
I admire it. I try to stay out of the way. From the early days when I played the AT&T with Johnny Miller and Mike Reed and Charles Schultz, that was our foursome for a number of years in the early 90s. You just tried as an amateur to stay out of the way, be supportive, know that they're out there trying to, make a living. So I think there's a respect to that. You got to be very careful. But there's some guys that actually feed off of it. I think Phil is one of those guys that I think kind of feeds off of the interaction. And that's a natural part of that, someone's personality. And I think that we've all loved being kind of having a view into it. I remember when Charles Schultz, I played one year and I've never been great, Frank. I've worked hard at it. I love the game. I try to, I hit thousands of balls a week, just trying to figure out what's best for me and what I enjoy. How can I swing my swing? Early on, I was struggling. And I remember playing, like we were at Poppy Hills back then before it changed. And we were sitting in one of the backups, and Charles Schultz, who's by then is about 80 years old, Peanuts fame. I was playing with Mike Reed, and we sat down the bench, and I'd only known him for 3 or 4 holes and saying hello. And obviously, here I am playing with Charles Schultz. Amazing. I sit down and I've only played 3 or 4 holes, Frank, and I'm just getting to know him. And he turns to me in classic Peanuts fashion. He goes, "You must be really embarrassed." And I said, I was like, because, you're such a famous athlete and, this is not going very well. I just remember thinking, and that's so classic. I came back, I turned back and was like, "You're right. I am." It was really just one of my favorite memories. There's so many memories of being down and being a part of the AT&T you can imagine through the years.
Who put a golf club in your hand the first time?
I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, and you can imagine I caddied for years and didn't belong to a country club or anything. And I played football, basketball, and baseball. Those are my friends. Those are my teammates. Those are the guys that's what I did all of my life. And so golf was always something you did every once in a while. And I didn't have any lefty clubs when I was young. You had to order them from Sears or spend money, which I didn't have. So I played righty, and I put the first club in my hand probably when I was in high school, going up to the Bruce golf course and just trying to hack it around. And I so regret not being taught at that time how to, the proper things, because then you can build off of that. And so then I kept gathering through college and then my early pro days, just gathering things, trying to figure out stuff. And, when you start that way, it takes some time. And so golf's been an ongoing, I don't know. I mean, it's a love affair that so many people have with golf, and so much of it's about trying to harness your humanity, and harnessing your humanity is not easy, as it's been proven by golf.
Well, it's obvious you have. I mean, to be able to have that moment with Charles Schultz, and as he said, you're an incredible athlete, and to be able to laugh at his comment, that speaks more to who you are than to who he was.
Well, I know, but that's classic Schultz, right? Isn't that
yeah.
Like, he couldn't help but just be kind of frank and honest with you. So I did make amends, though. I did. By the end of the 4 days, I go, "Charles, let's be honest, it's better than you thought." He goes, "Yeah, I will agree. That was a rough start."
Who had the biggest impact on your life?
I've been coached. I was coached by, think about it, in college with Lavelle Edwards, famous college coach, Mike Holmgren as my offensive coordinator, Sid Gilman, who anyone who knows football and knows the history of the forward pass knows that he was the godfather of it all. Bill Walsh. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Mike Holmgren again with the 49ers, Mike Shanahan, Steve Mariucci. These are my coaches. So, I mean, I really don't know how to say I was well coached. I mean, any better than that. But the biggest impact has to be from the home, and it has to be your parents. My mother is a peacemaker. She will do anything for peace in our home. When our growing up, she would, and I think that there's a spirit to the fact that she would do anything to bring peace, and she would sacrifice anything to have a peaceful home. And I think there's an impact on my life, so dramatic, and how I think about that, and how I pay that forward with her. And my dad, his nickname is Grit, if you can believe it.
Wow.
He was, as a young kid, he was named Grit Young. And I'm telling you, he's every inch of that, Frank. He is the grittiest man I know. And so there's that peacemaker part of my mom and the grit part of my dad that, as I get older, I look back and you ask me that question, people have had huge impact in my life, but foundationally in who I am is really just those personality traits that were passed on, that I look back on my own life and I go, wow, that it exposes itself through time. And And so I got to be honest with you, everyone says their parents, but I can tell you, I can point specifically to the qualities that they exuded and modeled. They didn't say it. My dad didn't teach grit. My mom didn't teach peace, but they modeled it in how they behaved. And so because of that, that's how when people model things, you can actually take them in a much more profitable way, I think.
Love it. You've accomplished an awful lot in your life and so much to be proud for. And I would imagine family would be up there first, but of all of the things that you've been able to do, what makes you most proud?
Oh, my football career, I did as a single man, and then got married right towards the end. Barb and I got together right towards the last season. And my life, you can think about it in different ways. It's a big change that happened right then. We had started, Braden was born, and then we had 4 children. And people ask me, do you miss football? And I'm like, I miss it. I miss the fact that something takes every inch of myself, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, every inch to be great. There's something about that engagement and engrossing that you just miss. You can't replicate. And people try to replicate it and fail miserably. You should not try to replicate being on the field in the NFL. There's nothing like it. And so I miss it. But my life became so much more sublime, so much more rich than I ever imagined, raising children and building a family. And so that's, my tombstone, I want it to be, he was a great dad. And I'm not saying that lightly. I really mean it. A great husband. I really mean those things. And then he played some ball and did some stuff. You know what I mean? There's something about the engagement in that life-defining stuff that, I don't know. I mean, I'll tear up just thinking about it today. I dropped the girls off to my kids. My boys are in college now, and my girls are in high school. And, we were driving to school this morning, and my daughter's who's learning to drive. So she's got the stick shift. I'm trying to teach her because I'm old school, gotta have the stick shift, in the Jeep. We're trying to teach her how to drive. She wants to drive to school. She's driving to school. It's Grandpa's birthday. And I'm like, yeah, let's get him on FaceTime. So we're FaceTiming, showing her, doing the shift. My grit's doing the old school shifting. Oh, what a good job. It's like, these are the moments. That's it. That was this morning, Frank. That's, what do you want your life to be about? This morning is what I want my life to be about.
Steve, you answered my last question, which was, how would you like to be remembered? And I can't think of anything better on your tombstone than he was a dad, and he was a great dad. You're extremely intuitive, very engaging, very passionate, and I appreciate the depth that you've gone to in this discussion today. It's been very fun to get to know you, and I wish you nothing but great success and a lot of fun, a lot of enjoyment while you're playing some golf and doing some good for some local charities this week.
Thanks, Frank. I have to admit, a couple of years ago, through the Monterey Peninsula Foundation, the AT&T, they gave me the Arnold Palmer Award for, kind of philanthropy in golf. And in the reception of it, I remembered playing with Arnold Palmer at one of the Cadillac. We used to have the senior golfers and the NFL players play in New Jersey at the Cadillac tournament. And I played with Arnold Palmer. I was coupled with him. And I remember thinking to myself, and the impact, as I always think about him as reflexively kind. There's some people can be kind as a transaction. You know what I mean? People can go, well, I'm being kind because I want you to think well of me, or, that's fine. But some people are just kind. And Arnold, so golfers have had an impact on me through my whole life. Johnny Miller, Johnny, I mean, he's a good friend. These golfers have had an impact on my life. And I love have a chance if, someone said, Steve said, hey, do you mind getting on with Frank and talking about some AT&T golf? I'm like, all day long and every day on Sunday, yes, I love my experience with golf. It's been phenomenal. And Frank, thanks for letting me share it a little bit and the enthusiasm I have for it. I appreciate it. It means very much to me.
Thank you very much. I wish you great success. Go home and hug your kids tonight and know that all is right with the world.
That's the best. Much love. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
See you, buddy.